Welcome to episode 75 of the 3 Fear podcast. This is part 2 of the Borley Rectory series. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, then please do listen to that because this is a continuation of the previous episode. So we last stopped with the Smiths leaving the Borley Rectory on 14 July 1929. Now the parish had some difficulty finding replacement because of course, no one wanted to stay in a place that was supposedly haunted. On 16 October 1930, Reverend Lionel Foyster, a first cousin of the Bull family, and his wife Marianne moved into the house along with their adopted daughter Adelaide. Now the Foysters would later go on to say that since the time that they moved into the house, so many different things happened. Windows were shattered, stones and bottles were being thrown around, there were writings on the wall, and at one point, Adelaide was even locked in a room with no key. Also, during the course of their stay, the Foysters tried to conduct an exorcism, not once but twice, but they weren't successful. Now, I want to mention that most of the information in this episode and some from the previous came from a document that I found which was written around that time. I'll link the document in the description. You can read it. It has a lot more details into the family's personal lives and what went down. But here in this episode, I condensed everything down because if I go on to add everything, this episode is going to be far longer and we may have to have another third episode. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the 3 AM Fear podcast. I'm Nikita Ferrao, mystery and thriller author. On this podcast, I talk about real crimes and real people. Due to the graphic nature of some of this content, listener discretion is advised. You can find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. Let's get started. In October of 1930, a new family moved into Borley Rectory. Reverend Lionel Foyster, a cousin of the Bull family, his wife Marianne, and their daughter Adelaide had returned to the UK from Canada. Their story was full of drama. Lionel had actually baptized Marianne when she was a child, which was unusual even for the 1930s. Marianne was born in 1899 in Ireland and had married an Englishman at a young age and had a child named Ian. After some family conflicts, she separated from her first husband, and that is when she started getting closer to Lionel, who was living in Canada. Their relationship grew closer, and eventually Lionel invited Marianne to join him to live in Canada, leading to them finally moving into the Borley Rectory. Marianne and Lionel moved into the Borley Rectory in October of 1930. Now there was a lot of controversy surrounding them because of their age gap and the very fact that Lionel was the one who baptized Marianne. Marianne was in her 20s and Lionel was much older. The Foysters loved children, and because they didn't have any of their own, they decided to adopt one, and that is where Adelaide comes into the picture. It is said that Marianne secretly adopted this child, and so not a lot is known about her. Some say that she was born out of wedlock, and because her mother didn't want to keep her, she was secretly delivered, and then Marianne officially adopted the child. Now, there was also this strange rumor around that time that Marianne was into baby farming, a business where she would have young girls give birth to kids. But this is all just gossip, so I'm not going to go further with it. Life at Borley Rectory was not ordinary. Marianne was described as a very negative kind of a person. One day she saw an advertisement in the newspaper about a young boy looking for a home. This led them to taking in the boy named Douglas, whose father Frank often visited them on weekends to do odd jobs. Now Frank was described as a dark, stout man with a love for telling lies. And it is said that soon Frank and Marianne started having an affair. Around the same time, Lionel started writing a diary documenting the strange things that were happening in Borley Rectory. Although some of these incidents were said to be lies, Lionel claimed that Marianne actually saw the ghost of Harry Bull, something that she would later go on to say never happened. In this diary, it would be said that at first these ghostly activities were innocent, small things moving around, but later on they would get far worse. In fact, Marianne even claimed at that point that she was hit in the eye by some mysterious force and that a hammer allegedly flew across the room, narrowly missing her. In the spring of 1931, mysterious writing started appearing on the walls of Borley Rectory. The messages would read, "Marianne, please get help." It was like someone was begging for help. The Foysters tried to communicate with the spirit. They even wrote back, but nothing happened. Many believed that Adelaide, the young girl whom they had adopted, was the one who was scribbling around and that it was not a ghost. Some others thought that maybe it was Douglas, Frank's son, who was playing these pranks. But there was no proof for any of this. Now, according to the diary that Lionel kept, he recorded that on the very first day that he moved into Borley Rectory, Marianne and Adelaide had heard footsteps around the house. And then there was a voice calling out, "Marianne dear?" Adelaide was 2.5 years old at that time. Now, as I said before, Lionel was a much older man compared to Marianne. He was around 60. He had chronic arthritis and his health was also not that great. He was greatly respected in the neighborhood. Marianne would later go on to say that the writings appeared on the same time that a new visitor arrived at Borley Rectory, Edwin Whitehouse, the nephew of the church warden. Edwin was a World War I veteran who was also suffering from PTSD, and he had a deep interest in spiritualism. When he first visited Borley, he saw more writings on the wall, including this one message that said, "Get light mass and prayers." Many thought that Edwin was the one who was faking all these ghostly messages and that he was writing all these things in the rectory. But there was also one more thing that came into everyone's mind. The writings on the walls were strikingly similar to Marianne's own handwriting, leading many to believe that maybe she was writing them. Also, one more fact is that the ghost occurrences were very convenient because she could have been using them to hide her secret affair with Frank. This could have also been a way for Marianne to explain why were there noises in the middle of the night. During Edwin's first visit, he told Lionel to call him immediately if anything happened. Not long after, Marianne fell sick and was prescribed bed rest. She spent the night in the spare bedroom, which was known for its shaky bed that often collapsed. The next morning, Marianne said that she had heard footsteps and taps throughout the night. Lionel immediately called Edwin, and when Edwin came, he found that one of the bedrooms was completely ransacked. Items were thrown everywhere. Edwin claimed that the disturbance had somehow spread to the adjacent Blue Room, and we know what happened in the Blue Room. 2 of the Bull family members had died there. As Edwin left the room, he heard Marianne scream. He and Lionel rushed back to find her on the floor with the mattress on top of her. Marianne said that someone pushed her, but it could be possible that the bed just collapsed and she was trying to move quickly, but once again, they weren't there. Feeling all overwhelmed, Edwin's aunt and uncle invited the Foysters to live with them for a while so that they could go away from this haunted house. Throughout the summer, various investigators would come and visit Borley Rectory, most of whom suspected that Marianne was the one who was responsible for all of this. The noises, the writing, it was all Marianne. One investigator named Sir John even held a seance and privately told Lionel that he believed that Marianne was hysterical. Now, all that was happening here went to the Bull sisters, and that is when they called Harry Price to visit the rectory once again. We have already covered about Harry Price, so you know what kind of a person he is and what judgment he is going to give about this. Harry Price arrived on October 13th, bringing a couple of women from his research group and his secretary. They met with Lionel and Marian, and during their visit, Harry performed one of his classic tricks. He made ink appear in a glass of water. He claimed that Marian was responsible, but given Harry's reputation, anything could be possible. We know that he was a liar. Later that night, Marian went to bed early, but soon after the group heard a loud crash in the hallway. They found a bottle that had been thrown down the stairs. But Marian was fast asleep in a room. As the night went on, more and more strange things would happen. Bells would be ringing in the house, pebbles would fly down the stairs. Lionel would even say that he brought Marian a cup of tea and the bedroom doors were mysteriously locked, and they would only open when he recited the Lord's Prayer. Harry Price became suspicious, thinking that Marian was behind all this. When he confronted the Foysters, they denied everything. They said Marian didn't do anything. Now, despite all this tension, Lionel convinced Harry to stay one more night. That night, the bells rang again. Though it could have been anyone, Frank, the children, anyone else, there was no proof to say who it was. The next day, Marian told Harry not to return, but he did visit at least one more time to check out the writings on the walls, which he once again also told that it looked like Marian's handwriting. In January of 1932, a local spiritualist group called the Mark Tay Spiritualist Cycle visited Borley Rectory. The group was led by Mr. and Mrs. Warren. If you have listened to my previous episodes, you would definitely know who Mr. and Mrs. Warren are. Mr. and Mrs. Warren, that is Ed and Lorraine Warren, are the main people behind the real story of the Conjuring movie. I'll put a list in the description of the episode numbers and the stories connected to them, and you can check them out on any platform. Now, Ed Warren was a demonologist while Lorraine Warren was a medium. So Ed and Lorraine Warren performed seances with a medium named Guy Lestrange. Guy would later write an exaggerated account of events, saying that Marian actually floated around the house in a trance and that there was a glass smashing. The group heard bottles being thrown down the stairs, and many believed that Frank might have been the one who did it because he was in the house that night. Andrew Clark even suggested that Frank could have accessed the house through the cellar and thrown the bottles down in different locations. Now, around this time, Lionel found out that his wife was cheating on him, and so it was a very hard time for him. With this haunting, finding out about her affair, it was all too much. Marian finally decided that she was going to leave Lionel. She and Frank moved to London, where they opened a flower shop. Frank was said to be very abusive. He even blackmailed Marian, leading Lionel to beg for help from a cousin to get rid of him. Frank died in London around 1966. In 1935, Marian, who was now pregnant with another man's child, married Henry Fisher. Despite still being married to Lionel, she and Henry would go on to live together. The Foysters left Borley Rectory the same year. Lionel died in 1945, and Marian later moved to USA with another husband, Robert O'Neill. I think this gives a pretty good idea of the type of person that Marian was and why many believe that Marian could have been the person behind all these hauntings. But once again, we can't believe Harry Price, so that is why I mentioned each and every person who believed that Marian could have been behind this. Now, around the same time, Harry Price published his book, Confessions of a Ghost Hunter. The Borley Rectory would remain empty for several years. A new rector took over in March of 1936. But he didn't show any interest in living there because of, once again, all the haunting legends that were there. In May of 1937, a new tenant moved in, and Harry Price, who had stayed in touch with the Bull sisters, contacted this new owner, Reverend Alfred Henning. Harry arranged a 12-month lease at a bargain price of £30, that is close to around £2,200 today. On May 25, 1937, Harry placed an ad in the Times inviting people to join for a year-long investigation in this alleged haunted house. He told the people that you could sign up, come and live in this house for 12 months and then figure out whether it was haunted or not. Harry interviewed nearly 200 applicants and selected 48 part-time investigators. He provided them with a book with all the haunting history, the instructions on what they were supposed to do, and what they were supposed to give him. Now, among the investigators were Sidney Glanville and Mark Pierce. Sidney kept detailed reports of his time in the rectory, which he compiled into a book with a padlock. Now, each investigator had to fill out the haunted house decor form, document whatever they were finding, and whatever they found, they had to give it over to Harry Price. This is what Harry wanted. He wanted them to do the work and hand it all over to him. Harry wanted to keep all these Borley Rectory investigation things to himself, so he made sure that they all signed a form saying that whatever experiences they had to give it to him, and they were not allowed to take their experiences or their photographs with them. Visitors had to book their times with Harry, who would notify the caretakers when they would come. Most of the rectory was empty, with the library turned into a temporary operations room. Investigators stayed in uncomfortable conditions, sleeping in camping beds using paraffin lamps. Their tasks would include going around the building, listening for any unusual or strange noises, sitting in specific rooms and just watching to see if something paranormal would happen. They had to live in a very cold environment because the whole thing was you had to experience it to believe it. In late 1937, Sidney and his daughter held seances using a planchette, a tool that could call up any demon. They claimed to communicate with a spirit they identified as a nun named Mary Lair. The spirit allegedly said that she had been murdered in the 17th century and told them to look in a well for a child's body. However, the well tank was actually in the attic and not the cellar. Sidney also claimed that the spirit said that the rectory would burn down, revealing hidden bones. This prophecy would likely come true because the rectory would actually burn down a few years later, that is in 1841. Harry's investigation ended in May of 1938. Years later, he made a BBC broadcast discussing the events at Borley. He never mentioned the rectory by name, but he just told about his experience. Captain Gregson, who had recently bought Borley Rectory, was annoyed by the visitors, and he planned to move in by December. Unknown to Harry, these visitors were among the last people to see Borley Rectory before it finally burned down. On February 27, 1939, Borley Rectory caught fire once again. Remember, the first time that Borley Rectory caught fire was before the first person had even moved in the previous episode I had discussed. And this is after the third family. It is said that Captain Gregson had accidentally knocked over a paraffin lamp while looking into some books. The rectory was insured for £3,500, for which he had only paid £500. Many people thought that it was a scam and that he just wanted to make money, which in the end he did. Many say it was an insurance fraud, but we would never know, and Captain Gregson got a lot of money for it. A year later, Harry would publish his famous book, The Most Haunted House in England, which would finally name Borley Rectory as the most haunted house in England. In 1943, Harry and Sydney would visit the ruins and dig up the cellar floor, making a frightening discovery. They actually found human bones, an upper jawbone and part of a skull. An expert identified them as belonging to a woman, likely around 30 years old. No one knew who the woman was, and to this day, that mystery is not solved. Now, there is some controversy around the bones. A gardener named Jackson, who had previously worked on a farm, initially claimed that they were pig bones, but later on they would find out that it was human bones. Harry would then go on to write another book, The End of Borley Rectory, which was published in 1946. He said that he regretted that no university had investigated Borley Rectory. He believed that if someone had investigated this place well, they would have found a lot more. Many believe that all these hauntings could have been a mix of local legends, stories circulating among people, family drama, fights among family members, mass hysteria, and possibly carbon monoxide poisoning from paraffin lamps. That can make you kind of delusional. So it is possible that the people living there could have been hearing things or seeing things. Now, whatever Harry had claimed are mostly discredited by ghost historians. After people found out his truth and his lies, they now don't believe anything that he said. Harry Price died in 1948, but he left a lasting impression as a figure of intrigue. Now, whether you look at him as a con artist or a notable paranormal investigator, you have to agree that he did do a lot more work than anyone else had. With years of work, Harry Price is best remembered today for his writings on Borley Rectory. But the truth is, Harry did not actually start writing about Borley Rectory until during World War II between 1939 and 1945. When all these alleged hauntings were happening in Borley Rectory, Harry was not that interested. He did visit the families, he did write about them in the newspapers, but he was not that interested until much later on. Even after the rectory burned down, Harry didn't lead the investigation himself. Instead, he got a large group of people to come and do the supervision for him. He accepted their reports, he didn't question them, and at that time, it is said that Harry was traveling a lot. He was investigating other cases, writing, lecturing. He was enjoying his life. So whatever happened much later. When World War II began, Harry's travels were completely cut off. The newspaper space was limited, and so everyone was focusing on war news, and there was very less for, ghost stories. With public interest in his work fading, Harry decided that all the material that he had on Borley Rectory, he was going to put it together and write his best-selling book, The Most Haunted House in England. Now, after the death of Harry Price in 1948, a Daily Mail reporter named Charles Sutton accused him of faking paranormal events. Sutton remembered a visit to Borley Rectory with Harry in 1929, where a large pebble suddenly hit him in the head. Now, when he caught hold of Harry, he saw that his coat pockets were filled with stones of different sizes. That is where he believed that Harry may have been the one who threw this. In the same year, 3 members of the Society for Psychic Research, that is SPR, Eric Dingwall, K.M. Goldney, and Trevor H. Hall, who had previously been close associates of Harry, decided to investigate his claims about Borley Rectory. Whatever they found is published in the 1956 book called The Haunting of Borley Rectory. All things pointed out to one, that Harry faked everything. It could have been rats running around the house was old, so maybe it was creaking and making some noises, but overall, they blamed that Harry had faked everything. Despite all these revelations, some researchers like Robert Hastings continued to defend Harry, saying that Harry could not have been a fraud. This is what I meant when I said there is a lot in this document, because there are a lot of people who believe that Harry may have faked the whole thing. Many believe Marian could have faked the whole thing, while there are others who believe that this is actually true. So going to and fro in this is very difficult, and also because none of the people are alive, it is very difficult to know or find out what it is. And whatever documentation we have, it all came from Harry Price. And after this, you know that it did not come directly from Harry Price, but it was put together by these bunch of people who wanted to go and check out the place. A few years after Harry Price's death, on March 29, 1948, the story of Borley Rectory had grown so much that it became a benchmark case for paranormal activity. Whenever something strange happened, people would immediately use Borley Rectory as a proof. Borley Rectory was seen as the perfect example of a poltergeist case, the ultimate proof of paranormal. People would say, "Look at all those reputable people who were involved. How could someone say that it's not true?" In October of 1945, Mrs. Smith wrote a letter to the Church Times. She said, and I quote, "I would like to state definitely that neither my husband nor myself believe the house haunted or anything else other than rats and local superstitions. We left the rectory because of its broken down condition and certainly found nothing to fear there." End quote. In 1949, Mrs. Smith again wrote to the Daily Mail. She told about what she had experienced, what she felt, and she said that she did not believe that it was haunted. She would go on to say that she knew that Harry was an expert conjurer. Now, although Borley Rectory had been burnt down, it is said that even today, in 1986, this document around that time, it is said that people still visit the site. They get together, they try to investigate, they try to see if something had happened. While many of the explanations for the Borley Rectory are rational, many still believe that the place was haunted, and that is why all these things happened. Otherwise, how could 3 families living there experience almost the same things? Do you think the place was actually haunted? Or do you think it was just stories being passed down, the Bull sisters going and narrating the stories to each family staying there, and that's why they started thinking that the place was haunted? What do you think? A big thank you to all my fellow listeners who have been listening and supporting this episode. Your reviews, your listens mean a lot. If you love this episode, if you love the stories that I put out, then please do leave a rating on whichever podcasting platform you're listening from. It would really mean the world to me. Other than this, I also have a YouTube and an Instagram page. I'll link it in the description. Do check it out. I have different stories on Instagram, and I'm planning to put out some short horror stories on YouTube. So do subscribe to my YouTube channel and stay tuned. I am also an author, love fiction stories. If you want to check out my free fiction book, I'll link it in the description. I'll also link my other account in the description, where I talk about fiction writing, travel, and I also will soon start sharing fiction stories. So stay tuned. So do follow me there. Thank you so much for everything. That's all for this week. Stay kind, stay safe, and see you next week.